It was the first day of class at the Noble Academy, and the female professor felt frustrated by the students' poor performance. Her attention suddenly snapped to our protagonist, who was busy helping his friend. Calling out to Isaac, she insisted that he demonstrate his skill by hitting the most distant target with his lightning. Our protagonist thought to himself that in his previous life, he was a powerhouse when it came to lightning. But now, in his current state, he wasn't as powerful. Still, he managed to hit the target, astonishing the professor and earning praise. However, Isaac remembered that this professor was part of a knight order, backed by a powerful aristocratic noble family that secretly controlled the empire and ultimately framed him, leading to the death of him, his entire family, and his companions. So naturally, this time, he wouldn't just save his family and the empire, all those powerful nobles and their allies were going to die by his hands. We begin the story by skipping to the past. Isaac was once a nobody, a commoner who awakened and rose to the rank of high nobility, eventually becoming the king's direct advisor. However, today is the day he is going to die. Apparently, our protagonist was caught and framed for crimes he didn't commit. The ones responsible were the knights in white armor. Isaac calls them the Order of Liberation, a group of nobles that supposedly fights for the interests of the people. But in reality, the group was founded by the Desax family. This family were tyrants who had been secretly controlling the empire from behind the scenes. In other words, this grand show of justice is just a way to slaughter their enemies. Regardless, our protagonist shows a faint smile after being accused of working with demons and causing destruction across the empire. Elizabeth notices his confidence and asks if that person will come. Our protagonist nods, adding that he has known that person for 20 years. Isaac reveals that the person is Silas Monfront. The man happens to be our protagonist's best friend, and both of them share the same hatred for the Desax family, as they were responsible for making them orphans. Eventually, the two fought battles together and rose from commoners to nobles while opposing the Desax family. Anyways, the knight continues falsely accusing Isaac of the recent disaster in the kingdom. Isaac only scoffs when he is asked for his final words, before revealing that they failed to capture his friend. The knight notes the name Silas Monfront with interest as he removes his helmet. Isaac feels his entire world collapse. The knight turns out to be Silas Monfront. Our protagonist's friend clearly enjoys his reaction before revealing that he betrayed him because the Desax family made him a better offer. And just like that, our protagonist is betrayed by someone he considered a brother. Worse, because of Silas, every one of our protagonist's friends and companions is going to die. Driven by rage, Isaac calls upon his avatar. His avatar immediately disrupts the knight's formation. Our protagonist moves like lightning. If he's going down, he's making sure he takes as many bastards with him as possible. Meanwhile, his treacherous friend watches as Isaac slices through the knights like butter. Finally, he decides to step in, and using a powerful spell, he restrains our protagonist with barrier magic. Before long, Isaac is tossed into the guillotine for execution. Before our protagonist dies, he demands to know what he did for his friend to betray him. In response, Silas reveals that Isaac did nothing at all. He adds that Isaac was merely a pawn the entire time. In other words, Silas had always been a mole working for the Desax family. And just like that, our protagonist loses his head. Even as his consciousness fades, Isaac refuses to accept this fate. His regret and thirst for revenge burn even deeper. Suddenly, a mysterious power begins to glow, and just like that, our protagonist opens his eyes. The first thing he sees is destruction, people running for their lives. Our protagonist laughs hysterically, thinking God must be playing a cruel joke on him for him to end up in hell despite his good deeds and his attempts to stop tyranny. But something feels familiar. Upon closer inspection, he realizes he is actually in his village. The knights are wearing the armor of the Revel Count of the East. A voice snaps him out of his thoughts. It is his childhood friend Gabin, urging him to run. Our protagonist is momentarily shocked to see him, a friend he hasn't seen in 20 years. Because today is the day Gabin is supposed to die while trying to protect him. Shouting, Gabin urges him to run and follow him. His friend is too focused on running that he doesn't notice a corpse on the ground, so he naturally trips and falls. At that moment, it feels as if Isaac is watching a replay of the past. Knowing what is about to happen next, he rushes in without thinking. Grabbing a shield from the ground, he arrives just in time to block the killing slash. The knight expresses surprise, but our protagonist responds with a direct kick that disarms the knight. Apparently, that kick was supposed to finish him, but Isaac realizes in shock that his attacks are weak. Not just his strength, He can't sense even the slightest trace of his power. Seeing this, the knight admits that our protagonist is skilled for a worthless peasant. It's just a shame he's going to die. Meanwhile, Isaac freezes when he notices that his face looks much younger and there is no scar on his cheek. Gabon's voice immediately snaps him back. Thankfully, our protagonist regains focus just in time and stops the knight's strike by grabbing his hand. In his current state, the knight is far stronger, so our protagonist has to rely on his battle experience. But the knight keeps capitalizing on the difference in strength. Watching the blade get closer, our protagonist begins calculating his next move. Suddenly, he remembers a weak spot near the neck in the armor that allows movement. With this in mind, our protagonist sets his sights on the knight's neck. In a smooth series of motions, he disarms the knight, then immediately follows up by decapitating him in one swift strike. 20 years of battle experience have finally paid off. Naturally, Gabon is surprised by how Isaac dealt with the knight. He asks when he learned to move like that. Isaac is equally surprised and wonders if his friend is really alive, to which Gabon assures him that he is, unless someone says otherwise. Hearing this, Isaac confirms his suspicion. If his friend is alive and everything else is real, then he has traveled back 20 years before his execution. Isaac doesn't know how that's possible. He clearly remembers losing his head. But his friend places a hand on his shoulder, bringing him back to reality before he can ponder further. Gabon anxiously explains that both their families are in danger, since the Count's knights are burning and killing people. Hearing this makes our boy recall what really happened. He explains that today is the day Count Ravel tries to suppress the revolt in his village. If he remembers correctly, this was supposed to be the day Gabon, and also the day he lost his parents. So both of them immediately head to his house. Isaac decides to figure out the mystery behind his return later, because what truly matters to him right now is protecting his family. In his previous life, he was one of the most powerful warriors in the capital, and one of the few who could challenge the de Saxe family. But currently, he is back to being a teenager. On top of that, he hasn't awakened his power and hasn't enrolled in the academy. In summary, he is nothing more than a simple commoner right now. While running, Isaac senses danger. He grabs his friend by the hand and pulls him away just before an attack lands. Turning to see the culprit, they find the Count's own son, Zevald. Some villagers fall to their knees, begging him to spare their homes, but Zevald only reveals a condescending smirk, calling everything a consequence of their actions. Before anyone can react, he unleashes his power, killing villagers and destroying a few houses. Isaac remembers this scum. The fool simply enjoys slaughtering families. Even though Zevald and the Count are minor nobles, Isaac can't do much without his power. Turning to Gabon, Isaac suggests they run across the rooftops to avoid being caught. Following his suggestion, they finally make it to his house, where Isaac spots 3 soldiers about to enter. Our boy plans to act, but Gabon stops him, insisting they go get help. Isaac doesn't respond. Even if that were possible, by the time help arrives, his family would already be dead. Besides, these are just foot soldiers. There are 3 of them, but they aren't as strong as the knight he faced earlier. He may not have his powers, but he's confident he can deal with these small fries using his 20 years of combat experience. So that's exactly what he does. He makes a dramatic entry through the window. Inside, he sees 2 soldiers restraining his family while one prepares to confront him. Isaac quickly moves to the kitchen, grabbing 2 knives as his weapons. He throws the first knife with precision, and boom, one soldier is hit squarely in the neck. The remaining 2 are left shaken by Isaac's accuracy. Meanwhile, Isaac doesn't give them time to recover. He engages one of them in close combat with just a kitchen knife. Thanks to his years of experience, he senses an attack coming from behind. Isaac finds himself in a tight spot, unable to move forward or backward, so he uses the soldier in front of him and performs a slick acrobatic move, causing the second soldier's attack to kill his own ally instead. As the last soldier stands there in disbelief, Isaac suddenly appears behind him, making him break into a cold sweat. Isaac expresses that he has only ever dreamed of this moment, one where he finally gets the chance to do what he always wished he could have done. At the same time, he feels grateful to finally have that chance. After saying that, he ends the soldier's life with a single slash. His younger sister is the first to rush toward him, followed by his parents. Our boy feels warmth in his heart as he comments that he has missed them for years. His father is the first to speak. He is relieved yet confused, asking what his son meant, and wondering when he learned how to fight. Isaac promises to explain everything later. But first, they need to head somewhere safe. He suggests going to the forest, explaining that in his previous life, the villagers who survived were the ones who made it there and returned at daybreak. Knowing this, he insists that Gabin follow them. Gabin's parents' house is closest to the forest, so Isaac believes they are already safe. To reassure him, Isaac remembers that Gabin's parents survived the disaster, while Gabin died. This time, he promises to return him to them alive. With that, everyone heads toward the forest, following Isaac's lead. Our boy reflects that many villagers will die today because of the count. Since fate has given him a second chance, he swears to use it well. The scene shifts to the forest. Predictably, some villagers are already there, having lit a fire. Now that they are finally out of danger and the Count's men haven't reached them, Isaac is about to suggest they rest, but suddenly his head grows light and his vision blurs. He concludes that his body is too weak, and he has pushed himself past his limits. Once again, his thoughts drift back to the day of his execution. The image of Silas's betrayal remains vivid in his mind, along with his burning desire for revenge. Suddenly he sees Gabin's face, and at the same time, he opens his eyes. Without a doubt, Isaac is now certain that he has returned to the past with memories of the future. He still doesn't know why he came back, but now he has an unfair advantage over the D-Sax family and Silas, who betrayed him. With this in mind, he begins planning his revenge. First, he needs to awaken his power. However, his thoughts are interrupted by a scream. At first, Isaac panics, wondering if the Count's men have discovered them. Rushing toward the source of the scream, he finds his friend. Our boy is genuinely confused. Before he can make a move, his father stops him, insisting that he give Gabin some time alone. Isaac doesn't understand until his father reveals that the Count's men have murdered Gabin's parents. This comes as a complete shock to him, because it never happened in his previous life. Isaac refuses to accept this. Gabin's parents' home was closest to the forest, so he demands to know what happened. Apparently, during the time he was passed out, the Count's son flew into a rage when he discovered his men had been murdered. As a result, he used a wide-range lightning attack that affected the entire village, meaning Gabin's parents died because of his actions. By saving Gabin and his own parents, he unintentionally created some kind of butterfly effect. Just as Isaac begins to wonder if this is some kind of punishment and that he is destined to suffer losses, his father places a hand on his shoulder, assuring him it wasn't his fault. The ones to blame are the Count and his bastard son. In fact, since the bastard enjoys slaughtering, he only used his men's deaths as an excuse to kill even more people. Before leaving, Isaac's father tells him he is proud of him, because Gabin said he risked his life to save him. His father's words sober Isaac. Once again, he realizes this is a second chance, and he must make better use of his knowledge of the future to destroy the DeSax family. Thinking about this advantage, he remembers the first step of his plan. He needs to awaken his powers. It was already unbearably difficult for him to face a knight, meaning he can't do much without his powers. Also, with his power, he can protect everyone, most importantly, his sister. As he thinks about this, our boy gives us some context about what happened to her. Back when he was drowning in grief, he left his sister Madeline behind, and she ended up under someone called the Alderman's care. The Alderman was known as a kind man and the leader of their village, but that was just a facade. In reality, he was a scoundrel who abused his sister. Later, after he was done with her, he sold her to Count Ravel's men, which led to even more abuse. Eventually, she reached her breaking point and took her own life. But this time, our boy swears to protect her. He suddenly embraces her, silently promising never to make the same mistake again. This makes him realize something. If his sister is safe, doesn't that mean someone else might suffer her fate? Ignoring Gabin's grieving state, Isaac asks about his friend's sister, Hannah. Predictably, she has already been taken by the alderman. This is really bad. It had to be Gabin's sister of all people. Desperate, Isaac insists they go save her, because the alderman can't be trusted. Gabin is surprised by his sudden urgency, but reminds him that the alderman is the leader of the village. Basically, who could be more trustworthy than him? Right at that moment, the man of the hour walks in, asking what's going on. He shows concern for the two young men and suggests Isaac give his friend some time to recover. Isaac tries to respond calmly, knowing the bastard is hiding his true colors. Meanwhile, the alderman offers words of advice, telling Gabin to stay strong and assuring him that his sister is safe, leading Gabin to feel grateful. Our protagonist feels sick listening to their conversation. He leaves on his own, knowing no one will believe him, but that doesn't mean nothing can be done. Later that day, Isaac heads out to save Gabon's sister, all while thinking about awakening his power. He notes that in his previous life, after his parents died, it took him a few weeks and pure chance to awaken his power that had always been dormant within him. This time, Isaac isn't worried at all. He knows the exact method to unlock his power at any time, more specifically in just 2 days. The destruction of the village makes him promise to personally deal with Count Ravel and his son when the time comes. But for now, there's a large pig that needs to be slaughtered. Arriving at the alderman's place, Isaac leaps in and observes what's happening. It hasn't even been a full day since the village was burned, and the alderman already can't wait to enjoy Hannah's company. Our protagonist has seen enough. Before things can go any further, Isaac casually walks into the room, commenting that the alderman will remain vermin no matter how many lifetimes pass. The alderman is caught off guard. He made sure no one could enter, yet here stands a boy daring to interrupt him. Dropping his facade, he asks if Isaac has a death wish. Without giving him time to respond, he orders his hunting hound to tear him apart. Isaac is momentarily surprised, almost as if he didn't expect such a swift reaction. Regardless, he lures the hound out of the room. Just as it's about to reach him, he makes a sharp turn, confusing the beast and leading it outside, then immediately shuts the door, locking them out. Alderman narrows his eyes at this. Confident, he grabs his axe and reveals a secret. It was him who led the Count's men to Isaac's parents so he could get his sister. He tells Isaac this because he plans to kill him and deal with his parents afterward. Isaac simply sighs as if the plan is common knowledge. He already knows that Alderman not only orchestrated the attack on the village, but did so in exchange for being granted a noble title by the Count. Alderman is stunned, completely thrown off. He demands to know how Isaac knows all this. Isaac coldly replies that he knew right before disemboweling him. He doesn't hide the fact that he has killed this bastard before and is looking forward to doing it again. Just like that, Isaac charges forward with his trusty kitchen knives. Despite his large frame, the man swings his axe quickly. But it's no problem for Isaac, because, to our protagonist, the man's moves are far too predictable. Spotting an opening, Isaac strikes, delivering a clean cut to Alderman's thigh. Alderman grits his teeth in pain. He calls it a lucky strike and swings his massive axe with renewed fury. Still, it's no problem. His swings are too wide and easy to read. At this point, the fight feels like practice for our boy. Sweating bullets, Alderman demands to know who taught Isaac how to fight. Isaac replies that his concern is misplaced. He should be more worried about losing his head. Isaac leaps into the air, promising to make it swift and painless. But he fails to account for one variable. Alderman suddenly crackles with lightning. A surge of current from his palm sends Isaac flying. Isaac slams into the wall, the impact creating cracks across it. He takes some damage as he realizes his mistake. Back when he dealt with Alderman, he already had his powers. Alderman smirks, realizing the tables have turned. He mocks Isaac, saying he clearly doesn't know everything. After all, Count Ravel didn't just promise him a noble title, he also helped him awaken his powers. Before we proceed, our protagonist gives us some context about the nobles. Not only are the nobles tyrants who exploit common folk for their own gain, but this oppression also stems from their mastery of a formidable power. To put it simply, all nobles can manipulate lightning. This power can be created and utilized in different ways. One can use it to increase their speed or for spellcasting, like forming barriers. Basically, this power allows them to do things that seem impossible to normal humans. Rumor has it that this power was a gift from the gods, who tasked the nobles with protecting humanity by battling demons in the southern part of the continent. But Isaac reveals that this entire narrative is a load of nonsense, basically what the nobles want people to believe. The truth is, anyone can gain these powers. All they need to do is take a so-called awakening pill, a secret drug created by the nobles. Once ingested, anyone can gain the ability to manipulate lightning. Alderman, feeling the power coursing through his body, notes that the Count didn't lie. He thinks that with this newfound power, he can finally secure a place among the nobles. Isaac replies, saying the man shouldn't get ahead of himself. The best he could hope for is to become a lackey of the nobles until he outlives his usefulness. Hearing this, Alderman grows furious and moves to end things quickly. Isaac easily dodges his first attack and mentally notes that Alderman is just a novice since he only just awakened. In other words, there's a chance our protagonist can actually win, but he needs to avoid getting hit or he'll be cooked. While thinking about this, Isaac begins to form a plan. His eyes soon land on a copper wire. Meanwhile, Alderman is all excited. He's new to this and doesn't know what's coming. Isaac realizes his plan is risky and might work, but he only has one chance. He begins by tying the wire to a metal door handle. Next, he wraps the wires around a decorated sword. It looks like our protagonist is trying to create some kind of closed circuit. And yes, you guessed correctly. Now all he needs to do is bait Alderman into using his power. Thinking of this, Isaac resorts to taunting him, saying that despite awakening, he still can't even hit him, and yet he plans to become a noble. Of course, Alderman's fragile ego takes the hit, and he falls for the most basic villain taunt ever. The moment Alderman releases a massive amount of lightning, Isaac tosses the copper wire toward the current. Now the wire is coursing with electricity. Next, our boy dashes and slides behind Alderman. Alderman looks confused, but Isaac simply tells him it's over. With a direct kick to the man's gut, Alderman experiences a taste of his own medicine. After some time, he's burned to a crisp but still alive. He demands to know how Isaac won. Isaac is genuinely surprised that he survived, but at the same time, he finds it convenient because now he can end him personally with his trusted kitchen knife. Alderman's previous arrogance melts away, replaced with desperate bargaining and promises of power. Isaac just stares him down, asking how he has the nerve to beg for mercy after all the horrible things he did to his sister. Alderman is shocked, claiming he never touched his sister. Our protagonist towers over him, his figure reflecting the desire for revenge built up from his past. And just like in his previous life, Isaac cuts him down with a single strike. With the bastard dealt with, our boy rushes to check on Hannah. The girl only fainted, and he promises to take her back to her brother. Isaac almost forgets about the hounds as he opens the door, but one furious glare is enough to silence them. Let's just say the hounds quickly learn who's boss. The next scene takes us to Isaac's parents' home. His friend is visibly worried about him, but his parents reassure him. The moment Gavin hears a knock on the door, he rushes forward. His concern immediately shifts to worry as he asks what happened to his sister. Isaac tells him it was Alderman's doing. He also adds that the bastard helped plan the attack on the village just to get his sister. Gavin worries about retaliation, but Isaac calmly reassures him that he has already handled Alderman, making it sound like it was nothing. Shifting the topic, Isaac says he has something important to tell his parents and Gavin. Although he can't give them the full details, he explains that he'll be gone for a few days. He also assures them that the village is safe, so they should stay put. His father acknowledges his son's capabilities. Even though they don't fully understand what he's planning, they choose to trust him. So, our boy calmly tells them he plans to send the current count to meet the old one, meaning he plans to kill the count. His father is somewhat taken aback by this remark. His son has just indirectly revealed that he's about to kill someone. Nonetheless, they share a handshake, symbolizing trust. Isaac promises not to disappoint. His father's reassuring smile is enough to let him know he's proud of his choice. To carry out his plan, our protagonist heads to the mountains, because what better place to execute a secret plan than a dramatic hike? Here, Isaac recalls the awakening of his power in his previous life. Back then, he fled the village after his parents died. Consumed by grief and revenge, he wandered through the countryside. Eventually, he found himself at the top of this very mountain. After wandering for so long, it was only natural for him to rest. But the very tree he rested under became the place of his awakening. Yes, Isaac was struck by pure lightning because nothing says awakening like getting zapped by natural electricity. He always wondered why the lightning struck him. Well, it turns out the tree was a lightning rod, and the timing couldn't be more perfect because a storm is now gradually approaching. In other words, it's time to get struck by lightning. In the next chapter, our protagonist further explains the awakening phenomenon. He reveals that the so-called noble, God-given power has nothing divine about it. In fact, everyone has the potential to wield lightning and electricity. The only problem is whether they are able to awaken it. He explains that there is a certain region in the brain that, when activated, allows people to control lightning like a muscle. To unlock this great power, nobles rely on awakening pills. Through this method, they ensure a continuous flow of power from generation to generation. However, Isaac explains that awakening wasn't always like this. The first group of awakeners discovered that one needed to be struck by pure lightning, which is a far more extreme method. Of course, this brutal form of awakening is not without risk. One only becomes awakened if they survive the strike, and the chances of that are incredibly low. Now we understand why the nobles further studied the phenomenon and created the awakening pills. Regardless, Isaac is one of the people chosen by lightning. Now our boy sits on the tree, literally waiting to be struck by lightning. As if answering his call, the sky trembles with flashes of yellow. Our protagonist is officially the only one, aside from Barry Allen, who gets excited about being struck by lightning. Unfortunately for him, the lightning narrowly misses by a few inches. Apparently, he miscalculated and didn't quite remember the exact position where he was struck in his previous life. Isaac realizes he might not get a second chance. So, our protagonist resorts to desperate measures. Using the tree as leverage, Isaac ties a rope to his waist and dashes forward, aiming to leap off the cliff. He is willing to stake his life just to get revenge. The moment he appears mid-air, he is violently struck by lightning, which courses through his entire body. He faints momentarily from the intense shock. Moments later, our boy successfully awakens. He climbs back up from the cliff's edge, his mind focused on only one thing: revenge. Now Isaac's power is finally back. In his previous life, it took him years to master his abilities. But this time is different. He has 20 years of experience. Thinking about this, he clenches his fist and channels power into it. The result? He destroys a huge boulder with pure energy. Intrigued, our boy tests it again and gets the same result. A satisfied grin spreads across his face. Moving on, he decides to test his speed. In a single dash, he covers several meters in half a breath. Isaac realizes his current speed is about 100 meters per second, not enough to break the sound barrier yet. He then shifts his focus, wondering if he can summon his avatar. Channeling intense concentration, he attempts it, but what appears is barely comparable to a small animal. A bit disappointed, he notes that this falls within expectations. After all, he just awakened and isn't the powerhouse he once was. For context, an avatar is the manifestation of a great warrior's electrical soul. Unfortunately, it requires a high level of mastery to summon. Those who unlock their avatars are considered true powerhouses. Still, Isaac is satisfied. He has awakened his power, and now he has the luxury of training in peace. Mid-thought, he's suddenly startled by someone calling his name. The voice belongs to his sister. Our boy is shocked and immediately demands to know what she's doing there. Madeline reveals that she found his behavior suspicious, so she followed him. Realizing there's no point hiding it anymore, Isaac decides to tell her the truth. He warns her to brace herself, and then casually reveals that he came from the future. Of course, she doesn't believe that part, and wonders if he hit his head or if the lightning fried some of his brain cells. Now Isaac realizes just how crazy he sounds saying it out loud. Still, she can't deny the fact that her brother is now awakened. She immediately starts imagining the benefits: protection from corrupt nobles, and most importantly, wealth. Our boy gently knocks her on the head, telling her to take it easy. He acknowledges her excitement and promises to make things better, but she must keep his awakening a secret. Before he can finish, she cuts him off and expresses her full support and trust. After all, without him, she and their parents might already be dead. Suddenly, she notices the mark on his face and asks if it's permanent. It seems the lightning gave him the same mark as before. Days pass, and with Isaac finally awakened, his training begins. His sister is there to help him. In their first session, our boy focuses on improving his speed and senses. In a flash, he dashes, attempting to catch all the stones before they hit the ground. He manages to catch 14 out of 15. Madeline takes note of his rapid progress. It's almost as if he's already familiar with his powers. When she asks to be let down from the tree, Isaac refuses. Poor girl isn't coming down until he catches all 15 stones perfectly. Of course she's annoyed. She's been perched on that tree for hours. This time, Isaac successfully catches all 15 stones. Before she can celebrate, our boy suggests increasing it to 16. Look at him smirking, he's definitely taking advantage of his little sister. By the following week, our boy immerses himself in intense training alongside her. He admits that spending time with her and seeing her happy makes everything worth it. It's the best thing that has happened to him in 20 years. Still, he knows the time will come when he must deal with his traitorous friend. But for now, he trains with his sister, all to prepare for killing Count Ravel. In his previous life, he failed to avenge his parents and village because he didn't master his power in time. On top of that, his high noble status prevented him from acting freely without damaging his reputation. Looking back, he realizes that trying to change tyranny from within was foolish. But this time, things will be different. He materializes an aura sword with his power and aims it precisely at a tree. It's clear now, this time, the Count and his entire family are cooked. The storyline shifts to the Count's mansion situated in the eastern province of the Kingdom of Galia. A red streak can be seen scaling the massive castle with ease. The figure is none other than our boy carrying out his assassination mission. Though the castle seems heavily guarded, it is no issue for him. With his improved speed, the patrolling soldiers might as well be statues. Inside, our boy overhears some frantic dialogue. It turns out to be the head chef pressuring his staff to pick up the pace and prepare dinner. After all, he doesn't want to end up like the previous chef who got roasted and killed by the Count. Our boy finds this very convenient. Now he doesn't need to worry about finding the Count. Still, he needs a diversion. While contemplating, he spots some guards gathered around a campfire. The Count's guards are degenerate scum, discussing the girl's promise to them by the alderman. One of them, with a scar on his cheek, believes someone must have killed the alderman since they haven't heard from him. However, these scums are more concerned about the girls than the alderman's life. Hearing this, our boy realizes these are the same men who abused his sister in his previous life, and in this timeline, they were supposed to harm Hannah. Thinking about this, he decides to send them a parting gift. He cuts off the head of a stone golem above them. The massive weight crashes down, crushing one guard instantly and sending him to the afterlife. The others are in disbelief, wondering how a stone head suddenly fell from above. While one tries to investigate, another dismisses it as bad luck. Eventually, they decide to get someone to clean up the mess. Meanwhile, Isaac quickly dashes down the wall in a flash, seizing the perfect opportunity. Still, he knows searching for the Count might take time, so he decides to find a good vantage point. Activating his powers, he scales up a tower. At last, he spots the Count's quarters, a lit room standing out in the darkness. Isaac immediately heads there. His plan is to search the entire area, but he finds guards protecting the door. At this point, they are more of an interruption than an obstacle. Isaac moves in a flash. By the time the guards notice him, it's already too late. Both are instantly zapped by electricity. He casually borrows one of their swords, though he won't even need it. The scene shifts to the dining hall inside the mansion, where our boy boldly announces that the party is over. The Count's face first shows shock and disbelief, then shifts into sly amusement. Meanwhile, Zevold barely reacts to Isaac's sudden appearance. Despite his presence, they continue their conversation as if he were nothing more than a cold breeze. After a brief discussion, the Count suspects Isaac might be the assassin who killed the alderman. He concludes that this could only be possible if Isaac stole his awakening pills. Isaac is taken aback. Despite his clear intent, these people aren't taking him seriously. But it makes sense. This is how nobles view commoners. In their eyes, Isaac is nothing more than an annoying fly. Unfortunately for them, this fly is about to end their entire bloodline. Calmly, Isaac acknowledges the Count's deduction. Just then, Zevold speaks, saying his father now owes him 100 gold coins. It turns out the alderman was merely a pawn from the beginning. The Count yawns, thinking his son understands commoners better than he does. This family is truly twisted. They don't just use people, they treat them as tools for entertainment and betting. Isaac has finally had enough of their sick games. What he says next stuns them. He calls the Count a pot-bellied pig. Apparently that's what the Count is called in the capital. Isaac knows this because, in his previous life, he was part of the high nobility. One common practice among them is mocking provincial lords and giving them degrading nicknames. He doesn't spare the Count's wife or son either. He roasts the entire family, calling them a group of pigs. The Countess snaps. Her power flares, and she crushes her cup unintentionally. She launches a massive electric blast at Isaac, intending to burn him to a crisp. Her attack destroys part of the wall, filling the room with smoke. But when the dust settles, Isaac stands there completely unharmed and even more mocking than before. The Countess is stunned. She prepares another attack, this time amplifying her power to the maximum. That's when Isaac makes his move. Mid-cast, the Countess suddenly feels something strange and then loses control of her power. Isaac's thoughts reveal the truth. Her control is pathetic. It's a beginner's mistake to use too much power without mastery. Despite the Count shouting for his wife, Isaac reveals that all it takes to end her life is a single spark of his power. That spark overloads her magic, causing it to implode from within. The result is instant death. It doesn't give the Count time to mourn. He promises to send him to join her. Just inches before Isaac's attack lands, Zevold steps in and summons a barrier to protect his father. The Count quickly regains composure, and Isaac senses an attack from behind. He narrowly evades it. Now he realizes he's facing two opponents at once. The Count and his son step forward, declaring that thanks to Isaac's actions, his entire village will suffer if they manage to kill him. Isaac simply grins, the kind of grin someone has when they already know the outcome. He calls them pigs once more and declares himself the wolf that has come to hunt them. Zevold dashes forward like lightning, fist clenched, but to Isaac, everything moves in slow motion. He reveals that even though they awakened using pills, it's nothing compared to his natural awakening through true lightning. Still, he doesn't get a moment to breathe as another sneak attack follows. Despite his superior power, Isaac is at a disadvantage if the fight drags on. Father and son coordinate their attacks, trying to catch him off guard. At the perfect moment, they strike together, believing they've found an opening. But Isaac remains completely unfazed. To him, their attacks are painfully slow. In an instant, he catches both attacks mid-motion. The Count receives a brutal kick to the gut. As for Zevold, he suffers a far worse fate. After all, this is the bastard responsible for Gabin's parents. What happens next doesn't need much explanation. The moment he killed innocent villagers, his fate was sealed. Isaac overloads Zevold's power, killing him the same way he killed the Countess. The Count can only scream in rage. In desperation, he unleashes his full power at Isaac. But the attack does absolutely nothing. His lightning is as useless as a dead battery. Terrified, he demands to know who Isaac really is. Isaac calmly replies he's nobody, just someone who has suffered under their cruelty for a very long time. And now he's here to end the Count's tyranny once and for all. As Isaac approaches, radiating pure killing intent, the Count finally realizes the truth. Isaac's awakening came from real lightning. All his arrogance disappears. He curses Isaac for taking everything from him. Isaac nods, saying he simply came to clean up this pigsty. The Count, still clinging to hope, calls him a fool. He asks if Isaac thinks the other nobles will let him go after this. But Isaac's gaze shifts to the pendant on the Count's chest, the symbol of nobility. He snatches it and scoffs, asking if something like that is supposed to scare him. Even then, the Count desperately insists that Isaac is just a peasant unworthy of touching noble blood. He believes other nobles will hunt him down once he dies. But Isaac isn't worried in the slightest. Instead, he reassures the Count not to worry. The pendant reflects his rage. His purpose is clear. He declares that he will be the one hunting them, not the other way around. With that, he sends the bastard to reunite with his family and the previous Count. After sending that bastard to hell, Isaac can be seen running through the hall. Isaac is looking for something called arcanite. This is the most expensive and rare ore in the world, and nobles don't just use it for crafting their swords, pendants, and crests. It also allows them to amplify their electric power. Because of this, only nobles of high rank possess it in large quantities. Our boy remembers the Count boasting that he had an arcanite vein in his land. Thinking about this, Isaac believes the Count must have hoarded a ton. At least, that's what he thinks the moment he finally enters the Count's personal chamber, only to find a few small pieces inside a tiny chest after all his effort. Clearly, Isaac is pissed by the Count's showboating because he was expecting more. With what he has now, there's no way he can forge the sword he used in his past life. Let's shift things back to Isaac's village. Isaac believes that with the Count dead, it will take some time before the capital sends another one. In addition, with his new plan of hunting nobles down, they'll have far more pressing concerns than governing a distant province. In summary, his hometown and family will be safe while he enrolls in the academy and causes chaos in the capital. Isaac can feel his blood boiling with excitement to carry out his plan, and most importantly, to finally reveal his awakening. In his previous life, after getting zapped by lightning, he thought it was just an accident. He managed to drag himself back to the village and was on the verge of collapsing. He only learned about his awaken when the villagers showed concern, and small sparks of electricity appeared in his hand. That moment became a time of celebration because he became the only hope of the village. Normally, an awaken gives someone a shot at becoming a noble. Naturally, money will come, but more importantly, it provides protection against other local nobles. Now we know why our boy can barely contain his excitement. Just look at him grinning like an idiot. However, noticing that the village is strangely empty snaps him out of his thoughts. Isaac gets a bad premonition, wondering if the Count's army attacked without him knowing. He transforms into a streak of light. First stop, his house. He calls out for his family and friends. Just as our boy is confused and wondering what to do next, the entire village suddenly appears behind him. Turns out, it's a surprise. On top of that, everyone already knows about his awakening. There's only one logical explanation. His sister failed to keep her mouth shut. Even after he made her promise to stay silent about his power, Madeline avoids his gaze, admitting she only told 2 people, which means their parents are the ones responsible for spreading the news. Right on cue, the children start asking about Isaac's strength and how fast he can run. They quickly begin exaggerating, asking if he can fly, and begging him to show off his powers. Isaac tries to play it cool, suggesting next time, but the kids refuse. Surprisingly, even the adults chime in, encouraging him to show a little. Left with no choice, he agrees. Thankfully, he mastered a few party tricks in his previous life. Wielding lightning on his fingertips, he begins to shape and shift it, amazing the crowd. Everything would have gone smoothly before Isaac is interrupted by someone he doesn't recognize at first. The man says he has been looking for him. After reading the room, he realizes Isaac is a newly awakened, naturally the only one strong enough. He then demands to know if Isaac was the one who killed Alderman. That's when Isaac remembers him. The man before him is Reshak, the leader of the Silver Wolves, a mercenary group. Without waiting for Isaac's response, Reshak explains that he heard rumors about Alderman's death, and as a member of the Silver Wolves, it's his responsibility to uphold the group's honor, meaning he's here to kill whoever is responsible. Hearing this, our boy doesn't deny it. In fact, he says the fool deserved to die, a notion Reshak actually agrees with. As the leader, he's aware of Alderman's questionable interests. He even believes Isaac made the right call killing him, but as the leader, he must still avenge his comrade. Meanwhile, the whole time, our boy is staring at Reshak's sword, specifically the Arcanite embedded in the broadsword. Reshak beams with pride, seeing Isaac's reaction. He assumes our boy is impressed and must have never seen such a weapon before. Regardless, he prepares for combat, challenging our boy to a duel to the death. Seeing things about to escalate, Gabin steps in, suggesting Isaac refuse. But Isaac ignores him and analyzes the situation. He knows Reshak will be a tough opponent, but he's just a mercenary and not an awakened. That means our boy has the advantage. Thinking of this, he borrows Gabin's pitchfork, much to Gabin's dismay. Apparently, a fork is all he needs now that he's finally awakened. With Arcanite on the line, how could he refuse such a golden opportunity? Isaac is about to suggest they move outside the village, but Reshak says there's no need. He suddenly lunges forward, intending to end things quickly. Our boy blocks the attack just in time, momentarily surprised that Reshak would strike without hesitation. If he uses his power recklessly, there's a risk of hurting people. Thinking of this, he urges the villagers to move aside. After a fierce exchange, Reshak realizes that despite being newly awakened, Isaac somehow already has mastery over his power. Perhaps that's why he told the villagers to step back. This makes Isaac realize something. This is part of Reshak's plan to level the playing field. After all, Reshak isn't awakened, so it's only fair to restrict Isaac from using his full power. Isaac understands that because of this, he can't use large-scale attacks, but he's not out of options. While fighting, he begins applying small amounts of electricity to parry incoming strikes. Surprisingly, Reshak praises the move. Then he charges again. Isaac blocks the attack while thinking. Since Reshak isn't awakened, his movements are easier to read. Creating distance, Isaac throws the pitchfork straight at him. The pitchfork misses and Reshak shows a hint of disappointment. But what he doesn't know is that was part of Isaac's plan. Yeah, he's cooked. Isaac reveals that since he can't use his full power without endangering others, he'll use the pitchfork as a medium to channel his electricity. At this point, Reshak can only watch. In an instant, Isaac strikes from behind, using the pitchfork now charged with lightning. However, Isaac immediately notices something is off. The attack did no damage. Seeing Isaac's stunned expression, Reshak finally reveals his ace. Turns out, the guy is wearing full Arcanite armor. No wonder that attack felt like a tickle. As Reshak reveals his second title, he is known as the Noble Slayer. Seeing that Reshak didn't suffer any damage, thanks to a special property of the Arcanite, the truth is revealed. The stone doesn't only enhance electrical powers, it can also store them. With just a little stimulation, even a non-awakened can wield electricity. As for the mystery of why Reshak has so much Arcanite, he reveals that he stole it directly from Count Ravel himself. Since he doesn't know the Count has already been dealt with by Isaac, he plans to kill him next. Isaac is slightly surprised by the immense power Reshak displays. Reshak then declares that Isaac will be the sixth noble to fall under his blade. He charges forward. Isaac steps back just in time, narrowly evading a strike that leaves a massive crater in the ground. Isaac curses under his breath, worried about the villagers and his family. He can't afford to use his full power here. Although Reshak's ability and mastery of Arcanite are impressive, Isaac realizes there is still a way to turn it against him. We already know Arcanite is a rare mineral and ore, highly demanded by nobles. Isaac explains that it can store and catalyze electricity and lightning, which is why nobles use it to forge weapons and armor. Normally, those who are not awakened avoid using it due to its volatile nature. In simple terms, if Arcanite is overloaded with electricity beyond its limit, it explodes, unless the wielder is an awakened who can control it. Armed with this knowledge, Isaac plans to do exactly that to Reshak. Meanwhile, Reshak continues his relentless assault like a madman. Every swing of his blade is accompanied by his story. He reveals how he started by killing a baron who murdered his entire family. That moment set him on the path of revenge, vowing to kill every lightning freak he encounters, including Isaac. At this point, the duel is no longer about avenging the alderman. It has become personal. During the chaos, Isaac finally finds the opening he was waiting for. Seeing Isaac barely fighting back, Reshak laughs triumphantly, mocking him for not putting up a better fight. But Isaac is simply waiting for the perfect moment. Once the timing is right, he intercepts Reshak's strike mid-motion. Reshak freezes in disbelief, wondering if Isaac has lost his mind. But Isaac calmly tells him it's over. He admits that Reshak may be stronger in raw power, but there is a massive difference in experience. Then Isaac overloads the Arcanite embedded in Reshak's weapon. By the time Reshak realizes what's happening, it is already too late. His own power backfires on him violently. When the dust settles, Reshak is completely incapacitated. Isaac is momentarily relieved that he didn't die. After all, it took him years of training in his previous life to withstand and absorb such massive electrical output. Before he can think further, his sister and parents rush forward, relieved that he is safe. Reshak, still conscious, questions how he lost. Isaac simply replies that he used Reshak's own power against him. After a moment of silence, Reshak accepts his defeat at Isaac's hands. Then, dramatically, he raises both hands and requests that Isaac honor the death duel by finishing him. Isaac refuses without hesitation. Reshak is annoyed and insists he cannot be denied an honorable death, citing the mercenary code. Isaac calmly counters that he is not a mercenary, so he has no obligation to follow their code. However, he claims he follows the code of protectors. From the way he says it, it's obvious Isaac is making this up on the spot. Even Reshak is confused. This is the first time he has ever heard of such a code, but since he has lost, he has no choice but to accept it. Isaac fully takes advantage of the situation, declaring that since he has defeated Reshak, both he and the entire mercenary group must follow his instructions. Reshak looks like someone lost in a conversation but still trying to keep up. Still, he asks Isaac's intentions. Isaac reveals that their goals are aligned. His current plan is to bring down the nobles using force rather than politics or infiltration. He also believes Reshak's capabilities make him suitable to protect the village. So instead of leaving them vulnerable, he assigns him as the village's guardian. Isaac explains he will be heading to the capital soon. He cannot afford to focus on protecting the rear while fighting on the front lines. Reshak nods in understanding and makes an oath. As long as he and his men breathe, no harm will come to the village. Isaac is satisfied, but adds one more condition. How could he possibly forget Reshak's sword? That was his original goal for accepting the duel. Later, Isaac is seen forging a new blade. He explains that shaping the blade into a curved form allows electricity to be channeled and enhanced far more efficiently. This discovery will only be made a decade later in history. But once again, Isaac is using future knowledge to gain an unfair advantage. Finally, the time comes to leave for the capital. Isaac departs under the warm gaze of the villagers, all wishing him well. His sister jokingly reminds him to come get her when he needs more practice. Gabin tells him not to cause trouble in the city and not to forget them. Isaac promises he will return as soon as he can. It feels like the start of a long journey. At the same time, it feels like the beginning of Chapter 1 of his revenge. First, he must successfully enroll in the academy and use its resources to master his powers completely. And most importantly, that traitorous bastard. the one who made their 20 years of friendship sound like a joke. Whatever Isaac is planning for Silas is something far worse than anyone could ever imagine. In the next chapter, our protagonist is on his journey to the capital by sea. He can't wait to arrive in Lutetia. In his thoughts, he explains that once he gets to the city, he will first present himself to the authorities. All newly awakened are granted the right to enroll in the Imperial Academy, alongside children from noble families. However, he notes something interesting. Newly awakened individuals always consider their powers a gift from God. This is because of the traumatic experience of being struck by lightning, which makes them forget what truly happened. So, everyone naturally assumes they were chosen by God. While thinking about using this moment to train, a girl suddenly bumps into him. Our protagonist instinctively tries to help her, but to his shock, the girl turns out to be his sister. Even more shocked, he asks what she is doing here. Madeline wonders if it isn't obvious. She's coming with him to the capital. Our protagonist immediately disagrees. However, his little sister is completely stubborn. She insists on following him, noting that she doesn't want to remain cooped up in the village. Seeing his serious expression as he insists this is madness, she panics slightly. This leads her to question his sudden change in attitude, not to mention that her brother somehow mastered the sword and even taught himself how to wield lightning. She finds the whole situation suspicious and directly asks what he is hiding. Hearing this, our protagonist gives his usual response, saying he came from the future. Now, he can only sigh as his sister assumes he's making excuses. She concludes that he must have fallen and hit his head, which would explain his strange behavior. Our protagonist is left speechless. Still, he notes that it's too dangerous to bring her along, adding that their parents wouldn't agree. As if waiting for this, she calmly pulls out a letter, saying it's from their parents. Our protagonist can't believe his sister actually managed to persuade them to let her come to the city. He scratches his head, thinking this is going to be troublesome. Inside the ship's dining room, our protagonist silently observes his sister eating. He believes he can take care of her while also carrying out his mission. Suddenly, a group of soldiers enters, announcing that they are looking for a noble killer. They offer 10 pieces of gold to anyone who can provide information on the assassin who killed Count Ravel. Madeline notices our protagonist tense up and wonders if he was the one responsible. Before he can respond, a soldier approaches them, asking why they are heading to the capital. Our protagonist calmly explains that they are simply traveling, before adding that both of them are newlyweds going on their honeymoon. The soldier senses his nervousness and is about to question him further, when suddenly the ship begins to shake violently. The moment they arrive on deck, they see the cause, a serpent-like creature identified as a rorqual. Just as the crew begins using countermeasures, the rorqual knocks them aside. Seeing this, the soldiers begin to think they are doomed. Meanwhile, as our protagonist evades the creature, he explains that rorquals only become aggressive when a ship enters their territory. He knows he can easily scare it off using lightning, but doing so would immediately make him the prime suspect in Count Ravel's murder. In other words, he needs to find another way to resolve the situation without raising suspicion. He slashes at one of the monster's known weak spots, but is stunned to find its hide is incredibly thick. As a result, he is sent flying by the rorqual while trying to come up with a new plan. Meanwhile, the soldiers attempt to flee using a lifeboat. Our protagonist realizes that if this continues, the ship will sink in no time, so he dives into the sea. He notes that no one can see him now. This is the perfect opportunity to use his power. As the sea beast charges toward him, he prepares his lightning, and just like that, he blasts the rorqual, targeting its previous weak spot. The creature immediately retreats. As he resurfaces, our protagonist reveals another fact about rorquals. Since they are known to be prideful creatures, they will eventually look for a way to vent their wounded pride. Unfortunately for the escaping soldiers, they become the creature's next target. Meanwhile, our protagonist manages to return to the ship in one piece. His little sister immediately hugs him while playfully calling him husband. The girl is clearly looking for trouble, even joking about what a way this is to start their honeymoon. Regardless, our protagonist is celebrated by the others, but the poor guy is completely exhausted. Still, he hasn't forgotten his main mission. Once he gets to the city, the heads of nobles are going to roll. We finally arrive at Lutetia, the majestic capital of Gallia. As expected, our protagonist's sister is full of excitement as she takes in the beautiful scenery. In contrast, our protagonist isn't enthusiastic at all. After all, he has lived most of his life in this very place. His little sister asks why he seems so unfazed, but as usual, he doesn't explain. After leaving the ship, our protagonist walks calmly, while his sister acts like a complete country bumpkin. He brings her to a fancy inn and suggests that she handle the booking while he attends to his own matters. Madeline immediately stops him and asks for money. Our protagonist tosses her the gold coins the soldiers left behind on the ship. Seeing the amount, his little sister thinks they could practically buy the entire street. Our protagonist can only shake his head silently. She has no idea how expensive things are here. Still, he waves her off, insisting she handle things and reminding her not to spend carelessly. She agrees to buy only the essentials, while our protagonist wonders if he should be worried about her. As he makes his way forward, our protagonist explains the enrollment process. People like him are called the Chosen, but the enrollment isn't simple. A large number of people gather to enroll, many believing they have awakened powers. One man steps forward and demonstrates lightning abilities. Immediately, the soldiers observing the process step in. Our protagonist explains that some people try to cheat their way through. This man used Arcanite to fake his power, and as a result, he gets beaten. Our protagonist further explains that passing the test usually comes with a financial reward. Because of this, many people try to cheat and run off once they get their hands on the money. Finally, it's our protagonist's turn. The guard hopes he doesn't act like the previous guy. Our protagonist simply responds by forming a skull using his red lightning. Slightly shaken, the soldier acknowledges that he has passed and tells him to proceed inside. Our protagonist expected to pass, but he didn't imagine it would be this easy. The soldier also notices that his performance has intimidated the other candidates, as they now hesitate to step forward. As he walks through the corridor, our protagonist notes that, unlike in his previous life, the examiners didn't ask questions about his awakening. However, he suddenly stops when he hears a familiar voice. From his reaction alone, we can already guess who it is. Silas approaches him, mentioning that he dropped his admission paper. Handing it back, Silas politely introduces himself and notes that our protagonist seems new. Our protagonist doesn't respond. Silas becomes puzzled by the lack of reaction, unaware that our protagonist is clenching his fists so tightly that they begin to bleed. Trying to calm himself, our protagonist apologizes, saying he felt a bit off. Smiling, Silas says it's normal and considers it a side effect of awakening. With that, he leaves, hoping to meet our protagonist again sometime. However, our protagonist is furious that he let him go. In a sudden burst, he charges at Silas with his sword. Silas reacts instantly, blocking the attack. After the clash, both of them create distance. Just as they seem on the verge of fighting again, an instructor suddenly appears between them. He applauds their fighting spirit, commenting on how eager they are to use their powers. Octavio Grimaldi, the combat instructor, remarks that there's nothing better than forging friendship through clashing swords. After introducing himself, he tells them to relax, adding that they will have plenty of time to spar during his class. Our protagonist remembers Grimaldi. He was a key figure in the Order of Liberation, one of the people responsible for killing him in the future. Meanwhile, Silas smiles as usual and apologizes to Professor Grimaldi, explaining that they have just awakened their powers and are finding it difficult to control them. He then apologizes to our protagonist as well, in case he somehow offended him, and says he looks forward to seeing him in class. If we think our protagonist is dumb, he agrees and admits the same. He realizes his mistake in letting his emotions take over and decides to remain composed. Otherwise, he might lose his chance to kill Silas. He also notes that Silas is stronger than he expected, meaning he needs to find a way to uncover what he's really up to. During all of this, someone has been observing everything from the shadows. The mysterious figure comments that both our protagonist and Silas show great potential and decides that their loyalty should be tested. However, he doubts that either of them will make it out alive. We are taken to the Noble Academy, and today is finally the first day of class. During this period, our protagonist dedicated time to personal training. Although he isn't as strong as he used to be in his previous life, this level is already enough for now. To put it simply, he is far stronger than anyone within his current level. Still, he needs to be careful so that no one, especially Silas, discovers his true strength. The next scene takes us to the combat class. Predictably, Professor Grimaldi is eager to tutor them. After his introduction, he notes that the class will truly begin once he evaluates each of their strengths. He can already see that some are eager and built like warriors, whereas others, let's just say, are not suited for combat. Our protagonist gets the hint and immediately recalls what happened in his previous life. Back then, there was an accident where an old man was killed because his body couldn't handle electric current. This is because every year, Dozens of newly awakened individuals enter the academy to master their powers. However, the nobles employ a hidden system to keep the newly awakened in check. Professor Grimaldi announces that it is time to begin. Unsurprisingly, the first person he points at is our protagonist. He steps forward and introduces himself, leading Professor Grimaldi to remember him as the student who was eager to fight on enrollment day. The professor explains that he likes students like him and reveals that he has brought the perfect candidate to test him. Suddenly, a massive bolt of lightning descends into the area. The person who appears is Erwin de Sax, the mysterious figure from the previous chapter. Erwin is the eldest of the de Sax family. The de Sax family are the very first awakened and tyrants who control the empire from the shadows, the same people who killed him in his previous life. Even though Isaac hates them with every fiber of his being, he knows his current self is no match for Erwin. He also cannot take unnecessary risks that could ruin his plan. Using his head, Isaac comes up with an excuse. He admits he can be a hothead sometimes, but he is not foolish enough to go against someone like Erwin, who is obviously far stronger than him. Amused, the professor remarks that no wonder, with people like him around, Count Ravel got himself killed. Still, he suggests Erwin pick an opponent. Erwin replies that no one here is interesting. Irritated, he adds that this year's batch is pathetic and weak. Even more annoying to him is the fact that one of them is a frail old man. To resolve his annoyance, Erwin orders that the old man be brought forward. Two freshmen immediately grab him and drag him forward. Isaac questions what is happening, but soon realizes Erwin's intent. In the original timeline, things did not happen this way. Still, before starting the duel, Professor Grimaldi gives the rules. Both parties must not hold back, but at the same time, they must avoid causing long-lasting injuries. Our protagonist sees through his words. Normally, newly awakened individuals cannot summon much lightning. However, descendants of nobles, especially the de Sax family, are different. Their powers are awakened from childhood, and they have already reached a high level of mastery. The moment the signal is given, Erwin activates his lightning, telling the old man to brace himself, adding that the weak are not allowed in the academy. Seeing this, our protagonist instinctively rushes forward. As a result, he is struck by Erwin's lightning. Thankfully, his training allows him to endure it. Erwin seems impressed. Professor Grimaldi begins clapping. Impressed, he notes that both men have demonstrated what it means to be warriors. However, he adds that they are still weak, since they were unable to respond to Erwin's attack, even though Erwin intentionally held back. He assigns them to Class D, and mentions they may advance later. Although this seems like bad news to the others, for our protagonist it is perfect. Class D is the weakest and lowest class, meaning he will not be bothered by Erwin or the de Sax family's lackeys. One of the students, however, becomes furious. He tells Erwin that our protagonist interrupting the duel has stained Erwin's honor, and insists that he should be punished. In response, Erwin asks Ezekiel if a fly can stain a man's honor. What he means is that someone like him should not concern himself with someone as insignificant as our protagonist. The next scene takes us to the academy dining area. Amidst the chatter, our protagonist notices that no one wants to associate with the old man, as it is normal in the academy for the weak to be treated as outcasts. This causes him to reflect on his previous life. He realizes he was almost the same back then. He constantly chased power, doing everything possible alongside Silas to reach Class A. Class A is reserved only for nobles who have honed their skills from childhood. Eventually, he made it into Class A, which became his ticket into high nobility, and also one step closer to destroying the de Sax family from within. However, thinking about his original approach, our protagonist now believes it was somewhat foolish. This time, a different plan is forming. Seated, Isaac begins a conversation by introducing himself and asking the old man's name. The old man first apologizes, explaining that he is a monk and is observing a vow of silence. Since our protagonist saved him, he reveals that his name is Shin before returning to his silence. Our protagonist thinks about how favorable this is. If he associates with someone like Shin, everyone in the class will naturally avoid him, meaning he won't need to worry about being watched. It will also allow him to gather as much information as possible about the de Sax family and their allies, helping him understand how they managed to outsmart him in his previous life. However, his train of thought is interrupted when he overhears a familiar voice. When he looks up, he freezes for a moment in shock after seeing his sister. Immediately, he demands to know what she is doing. It turns out his little sister follows him wherever he goes. She fires back, asking if he knows how expensive things are in the capital. After all, someone has to cover the bills. Our protagonist understands her point, but still wonders why she chose to work at the academy of all places. At that moment, Ezekiel steps in, furious and falsely accusing our protagonist of harassing a staff member. Already irritated by his earlier stunt in the combat class, he now sees a perfect excuse to deal with him. Some students begin muttering, sensing that things are about to turn ugly for our protagonist. Our protagonist can only grit his teeth. He already knows the bastard has had it out for him ever since the combat orientation. But he never imagined the guy would follow him here and turn a simple conversation with his sister into something else entirely. Ezekiel approaches with rage in his eyes, telling our protagonist that this isn't his village. Our protagonist listens as the idiot states that there are rules in the academy that he must follow. In addition, he reminds him that our protagonist is currently a nobody. That is why his insignia is empty. He tells him that even if he eventually manages to earn a blood droplet and become a noble, it would not change the fact that he is impure-blooded. Finally, the narrative reveals Ezekiel's full name, Ezekiel de Normandy. The younger son of House Normandy, an A-rank noble family and one of the closest allies of the de Saxe family. Before things continue, we are given context about high-rank nobles and high nobility. Our protagonist explains that it is just a title they gave themselves, likely because they awakened their powers from childhood. In addition, they already enjoy privileges even before entering the academy. The blood droplet is proof of their high rank. As for impure bloods, they are those who only awaken later and enter the academy to learn mastery. In simple terms, nobles like Ezekiel despise people like them. Knowing this, and for the sake of his future plans, Isaac is already in the process of apologizing when Ezekiel suddenly attacks him. He asks our protagonist who gave him permission to speak. Everyone in the hall watches in silence. Then Ezekiel gives him permission to speak. So our protagonist begins pleading, asking the guy to let him off. However, something feels off to Ezekiel. Apparently, the moment he threw his punch, Isaac evaded it completely. There isn't even a trace of impact. That realization annoys him. He notices that Isaac must have applied a layer of lightning to his body during the attack. Isaac quickly tries to explain that it wasn't intentional, but Ezekiel takes it as provocation. In his mind, this confirms that Isaac needs to be taught a lesson. Our protagonist wonders if this is really going to turn into a fight. Suddenly, Ezekiel disappears. The next instant, a lightning-imbued punch sends Isaac flying backward. Isaac tanks the hit but immediately realizes how strong the guy is. He is forced to use all his power just to defend himself. But what comes next is shocking. Even while focusing entirely on defense, he realizes he is still not strong enough. Ezekiel continues overwhelming him. Now Ezekiel begins to taunt him. Isaac is slammed into a wall, cracking it on impact. He hadn't expected Ezekiel to be this powerful. Ezekiel approaches, impressed that he is still conscious. He tells everyone to watch, claiming this is the difference between high nobility and impure bloods like them. And just like that, Ezekiel continues the beating. Our protagonist is utterly humiliated. Still, Ezekiel doesn't stop. The attack continues until Isaac is barely hanging on. Just as Ezekiel moves in for the finishing blow, Madeline steps in, begging him to stop. Sobbing, she admits it was her mistake and that our protagonist should not be punished for it. Ezekiel pauses. After taking a closer look at her, his interest is piqued. Then, he shocks everyone by suggesting she take Isaac's place. Grabbing her hand, Ezekiel tells our protagonist he should be grateful because his sister just saved his life. As he leads her away, he adds that they will have some fun. Our protagonist can only watch helplessly as his sister is taken away before losing consciousness. In the past, he left her behind because he was consumed by revenge. And because of him, she was abused by aldermen and the Count's men. Suddenly, our protagonist wakes up, shouting. He immediately demands Shin tell him where his sister is. Someone tells him not to bother, reminding him that Shin is under a vow of silence. Turning toward a familiar voice, our protagonist is stunned to see Silas. Of course, he immediately becomes furious. Still, Silas is a bit taken by surprise that he is alive, noting that he was out for a day and was pretty badly messed up. Isaac demands to know about Madeline. Silas sits down and explains that she returned to her work post. He admits he does not know exactly what Ezekiel did to her, but with high nobility, nothing is certain. To them, commoners are nothing more than disposable pawns. Still, Silas tells him he should be grateful he is alive. It was all thanks to his sister. But Silas, mid-statement, notices Isaac's expression shift. Burning with rage and hatred, our protagonist swears that the first noble family he will destroy is Ezekiel's and House Normandy with him. The next scene takes us to the de Normandy family estate. Ezekiel is happy to see Madeline arrive just in time once again. He notes that he is going to trouble her, but he is still counting on her to help him clean. Our protagonist's sister can only agree with gritted teeth. Ezekiel leads her inside while expressing his appreciation for her keeping his indulgence a secret. The following morning, our protagonist walks with his sister. Throughout their entire conversation, Madeline insists that Ezekiel didn't do anything to her. She explains that the guy simply calls her occasionally just to show off to his friends. When our protagonist asks if that is all, she repeats her earlier statement, insisting nothing happened to her. Adding insult to injury, she reminds him that the guy once wiped the floor with him, so he can tell at a glance if she is being beaten or violated. In response, Isaac explains that he was simply worried and wanted to confirm Ezekiel wasn't hurting her. Slightly annoyed, she recalls the last time he was the one who needed saving. Instead of worrying about her, he should focus more on his classes, because once her big brother becomes a noble, she plans to spend all his money. With that, she leaves our protagonist behind as he thinks to himself. He can tell his sister is trying to hide her suffering. However, it is only a matter of time before he deals with Ezekiel. Later at the academy, our protagonist attends lightning training. The Class D students keep missing the target, which makes the female instructor furious. Elise de Sinclair roasts them, calling this batch of Class D worse than defective. In the middle of her frustration, she shifts her gaze slightly and notices our protagonist helping the old man. Our protagonist is slightly startled when Professor Elise approaches. He politely corrects her with a proper introduction. However, she dismisses it and continues addressing him as Alec, suggesting he should show the class his skill, which obviously makes our protagonist furious. Anyway, she asks if he can hit the farthest target. Everyone in Isaac's class wonders if that is even possible for their level. Our protagonist can only sigh inwardly. In his past life, he was a powerhouse who could hit all targets with his eyes closed. Although he notes the limitations of his current body, he can still manage to do this much. With that, he activates his lightning power, and his lightning bolt hits the target. Elsie is impressed that someone has finally managed to hit the target. However, she becomes furious when she realizes the students weren't paying attention and are instead focused on the protagonist. Meanwhile, Silas watches everything and smiles. He leaves, commenting that our protagonist has potential. Soon after, Professor Elise approaches our protagonist again. She notes that if it weren't for his poor performance against Ezekiel, she might have considered promoting him to Class C. She is still addressing him as Alec, making him wonder if she is doing it intentionally. Still, she insists he shouldn't get ahead of himself, adding that he is just the largest tadpole in a tiny pond. Our protagonist remembers this female professor from his previous life. She was part of the Order of Liberation, responsible for his death and the lives of his comrades. Although he hates anyone associated with the Order and the de Sax family, he knows she is right. There is a massive gap between pure bloods and impure bloods like him. To reach that level of power, he would need to train his body for at least 10 years just to come close to Erwin's level. But fortunately, he already knows a way to close the gap in a single day. Once again, our protagonist reflects on the high nobility. As already known, they use awakening pills to awaken their lightning power. However, he also notes that they continue consuming these pills to further increase their lightning power. Still, these pills are not enough, since they only partially activate the region of the brain responsible for controlling lightning. So, in order to gain complete control, the nobles created the emulation machine. This device helps unlock the full potential of lightning, and this effect is known as the Second Awakening. Of course, this is a secret guarded by high-ranking nobles, and that is how they stay ahead of the impure bloods. Even someone like our protagonist, who was struck by lightning to awaken, has no chance. Perhaps this is the reason Ezekiel was able to wipe the floor with him. Nonetheless, our protagonist needs to find the emulation machine, and he just so happens to know where to find one. During the Great War against the Kingdom of Britannia, the de Normandy family led the Kingdom of Gallia to victory. The newspaper shows the de Normandy siblings have been called to the front, meaning Ezekiel is all alone in the mansion. Coincidentally, the de Normandy family is part of rank A nobility. This means they possess an emulation machine, and our protagonist plans to make his move tonight. The scene cuts abruptly back to the de Normandy estate. Our protagonist appears, already knowing the place inside and out. After all, in his past life, after he reached Class A, Ezekiel had invited him and Silas multiple times, so avoiding security is as easy as stealing candy from a child. The only obstacle will be if Ezekiel is awake. When our protagonist checks, what he sees next catches him off guard. His little sister is being yelled at for missing a spot. Ezekiel warns her that if she doesn't clean properly, she might end up like the other girls. Our protagonist once again lets his emotions get the better of him. He charges forward toward them, his eyes flashing with killing intent as he moves to end him. Ezekiel blocks our protagonist's sword strike and is left furious by the interference. Meanwhile, our protagonist charges forward again, anger and hatred burning in his eyes. After a few exchanges, Ezekiel isn't impressed. One single attack sends our protagonist flying. Seeing this, Ezekiel mocks him. He then becomes curious about his relationship with Madeline. Growing furious, Isaac demands to know what he just called his sister. Smirking with amusement, Ezekiel notes his surprise. Initially, he thought Isaac had a crush on her. Still, he tells our protagonist to be proud of his sister. The girl is a hard worker. He adds that every night she cleans up after his twisted fun with other girls, a task he couldn't entrust to the household staff. Of course, our protagonist grows even more furious. While he was busy training alone every night, he never imagined his sister was at the mercy of this beast. When Madeline insists our protagonist should leave before he gets killed, Ezekiel corrects her, saying he plans to kill both of them. Our protagonist realizes that despite his training, he is still no match for Ezekiel. Because of this, he tells his sister to trust him before bolting off in a flash. Appearing amused, Ezekiel mocks him as a coward for running away and leaving her behind. That thought dies the moment he realizes our protagonist didn't run out, he ran deeper into the mansion. This can only mean his main objective is the emulation machine, though Ezekiel refuses to believe our protagonist even knows about it. Just to be certain, he dashes toward the emulation machine. Meanwhile, our protagonist, while running, thinks to himself that he has been in this mansion many times before. Back then, de Normandy always hosted banquets, and they would spend the entire night bragging about their emulation machine. Finally, our protagonist locates where the machine is. Furious, Ezekiel screams at him, calling him an impure bastard. However, our protagonist ignores him and enters the machine, turning it to full power. Seeing this, Ezekiel is shocked and demands to know how our protagonist even knows about the machine. Ezekiel's attempts to stop him are futile. Our protagonist tells him that he is too late, because now he has finally undergone his first ever second awakening, and yes, he can feel his lightning power increasing exponentially. Seeing this, Ezekiel calls him a bastard for desecrating his family's machine. Summoning his avatar, he shouts at Isaac, telling him that even if he has increased his power, it will take years for him to master his avatar. Next, he attacks, destroying the machine and screaming for our protagonist to die. Unfortunately, he is too late. Ezekiel's mind can't process what is happening, because now our protagonist has successfully summoned his full avatar, the very soul of his awakening that connects his brain to his heart. And as the protagonist, his current power is limitless. Finally, we have come to the part we have been waiting for. One punch from our protagonist's avatar sends Ezekiel flying and crashing outside the estate. Ezekiel still can't believe what is happening. Our protagonist coldly tells him that he isn't done. And just like that, the two of them begin fighting. Ezekiel taunts our protagonist, saying it will take more than that to kill him. Our protagonist was hoping he would say that. After exchanging a few moves, our protagonist gains the advantage. Now it is his turn to taunt him, asking why Ezekiel isn't laughing anymore. Our protagonist has barely broken a sweat, while Ezekiel is desperately trying to hold on, yet he remains arrogant. Now this is where our protagonist reveals something interesting and shocking. He explains that a lightning wielder's avatar is fueled by emotions. So now, with everything he has endured and suffered from the nobles, both in his past life and current life combined, his hatred and anger are on another level. The author just gave the best possible power-up to someone with anger issues. Now it makes sense why our protagonist is so impulsive and unable to control his emotions. At this point, any clown or troll that tries to rage bait him is completely cooked. Anyway, Ezekiel is shocked by this outcome, and worse, he has run out of power. In response, our protagonist's avatar punches him straight in the face like a Karen asking for a beating. Our protagonist then unleashes punches JoJo style. After the smoke clears, our protagonist steps forward and tells the fool that, just like before, He didn't want any trouble. After dealing with Ezekiel, our protagonist leaves the de Normandy family estate with his sister. We skip to the following morning at the Noble Academy. The news of Ezekiel's death is discussed by everyone in the academy. Amidst the chatter, our protagonist remains unbothered, since he managed to return with his sister in time before Ezekiel's body was discovered. In addition, his situation is favorable even if an investigation were carried out. Who would suspect a D-rank student of killing Ezekiel? Moments after his contemplation, Silas approaches our protagonist and comments on the sudden gathering. Before long, he tells him that someone killed Ezekiel. Our protagonist reacts in genuine shock the moment he hears this. In his mind, he knows Silas likely revealed this news to him personally just to test him. After all, in his previous life, Silas was a master strategist, basically a mastermind in planning how to infiltrate the Desax family. With this in mind, our protagonist chooses his response carefully. When Silas mentions that the person who killed Ezekiel must have been his match, Isaac voices some doubt. After all, Ezekiel was in Class A and wasn't weak, so he assumes it must be the work of a Britannian spy. His theory is valid, considering the de Normandy family is currently fighting over there. Silas agrees, but notes he feels someone must have known about Ezekiel's death, since he had too many enemies. Our protagonist does not respond. It seems that expression gave him away. Smiling, Silas reassures him, noting it is impossible for someone in Class D to have taken part in Ezekiel's death. At this point, Isaac is certain Silas knows something. Still, Silas leaves, remarking that Ezekiel deserved to die, before insisting Isaac check on Madeline. Isaac does not like the way Silas mentions his sister. Just then, Professor Grimaldi orders silence in the hall. He announces to the students what they already know. Another instructor chimes in, stating that Ezekiel's killer is still at large and dangerous, and urges students to remain vigilant. The instructor is Claire de Jordan, responsible for discipline. When she mentions Ezekiel's death as the work of the enemy nation Britannia, Professor Grimaldi becomes furious, calling them cowards. He swears to find the culprit and repay blood with blood. Later that same day, in the bustling city, our protagonist walks alongside his sister as usual. Suddenly, Knights of Gallia begin announcing the presence of Britannian assassins. Hearing the knights offer 100 gold coins for information, his sister jokingly suggests turning him in. Our protagonist looks at a poster. Apparently, he is being called the Noble Slayer. He smiles as a wicked idea forms in his mind. He can use this to his advantage. The moment they arrive home, Isaac opens his bag, revealing a large amount of arcanite. Madeline, stunned, asks how and where he got such a quantity. He explains that he took it from the de Normandy family estate. After explaining the usefulness of arcanite, Madeline becomes furious, suspecting her brother is planning something dangerous. Isaac tries to explain, noting he cannot reveal everything, but there is a secret room in the academy that he needs to enter. Madeline tells him not to say any more. She already knows this is the part where he will claim he came from the future, which makes her feel a bit uneasy. Still, he tells her he knows a way to become stronger much faster, and if it works, it will help him become a noble much sooner. Hearing this, Madeline becomes interested, and Isaac uses the opportunity to ask for her help. Before she can continue rambling about how she will spend his money, our protagonist hands her a list of items she must acquire. Meanwhile, he plans to make full use of the arcanite. Outside, Madeline looks at the list. The items look like something from a science project. However, the sly girl has her own plans. She hopes her brother won't mind if she buys a few things for herself. Isaac's list includes mercury, a conductor, and other materials she does not understand the purpose of. She concludes her brother has completely lost his mind. Shifting back to our protagonist, his thoughts reveal his original plan. Initially, he intended to wait for the end-of-year ceremony, when security is usually relaxed. That was when he planned to enter the secret room. But now, thanks to Ezekiel's death, the city is on edge, meaning security forces will be distracted. This is the perfect time to infiltrate the secret room. As for the arcanite, its use is already known. Still, Isaac explains that in the future, a discovery will reveal a better use for arcanite to accelerate power. Right now, people use arcanite in chunks, but later they will refine it into fragments to increase discharge efficiency and improve lightning control. With his preparations ready, Isaac switches into Black Ops mode. With his second awakening and armor, he is currently unstoppable. The next scene takes us to the Noble Academy. Inside, students are seen complaining about Professor Grimaldi's classes. Suddenly, our protagonist descends like a lightning bolt. The students are shocked the moment the dust settles and they see him. Next, our protagonist destroys a wall with lightning. Because of this, one student thinks he is the noble slayer, the one who killed Ezekiel. With that, they all run out of the building. Shortly after, three figures enter the hall. They turn out to be Professor Grimaldi, Elsie, and Irwin. Professor Grimaldi thinks our protagonist shouldn't have gone far and tells them to search the entire building, adding that he wants the noble slayer alive. Meanwhile, our protagonist has already escaped using the ventilation shafts. Inside, he reveals his plan was to create a distraction in the North Wing. Since he knows the Noble Academy like the back of his hand, the professors will be busy searching for him there while he uses the ventilation shafts to head to the South Wing, his main objective, because that is the place where he will find the secret room. As expected, the place is completely empty. Now all he needs to do is head through the door. The door leads to Professor Elise's office. As a result of the commotion he caused, she is nowhere to be seen. Isaac remembers that in his past life, he had heard about the secret room, but never witnessed it in person. He notes that the passage is hidden through one of the books on the shelf. However, he didn't expect the key to unlocking the passage to be Kuma Sutra, making him call Professor Elise a pervert. Regardless, the passage is revealed and leads underground. Our protagonist explains that this is the hidden sanctum of the academy. This is apparently the place where the high nobility hold their meetings and schemes, and perhaps he will find clues about how he was supposed to be killed in the future. While walking inside the room, a document on the table catches his attention. Our protagonist is momentarily shocked. The document contains information about Silas Monfront along with others. However, before he can do anything else, someone enters the hidden chamber, noting she suspects the assassin wasn't a spy. Professor Jordan steps in calmly, stating that the high nobility have a lot of enemies. Our protagonist didn't expect someone to show up, and it had to be her of all people. Professor Jordan explains that she tried talking to Professor Grimaldi, but the man wouldn't listen. She finds it ridiculous that a spy from an enemy nation would kill a high-ranking noble. Unlike trash like our protagonist, Britannia has decency and would never resort to such tactics. Saying this, she suddenly launches a lightning bolt at our protagonist. Seeing his reaction, she taunts him, asking if he doesn't plan to fight back, or perhaps he's afraid of alerting the other professors to his location. Professor Jordan acknowledges that our protagonist killed Ezekiel, but unfortunately for him, when it comes to close space combat, she lunges forward, noting she is practically unbeatable. Our protagonist dodges her moves, noting how fast she is. When an incoming strike comes close to his face, he blocks it with his sword. Professor Jordan expresses surprise that our protagonist is wielding Arcanite. Our protagonist doesn't respond. Instead, he slashes and forces her back. Watching this, Professor Jordan resorts to taunting him again. Our protagonist wonders what he can do. He can't use his avatar now because it will destroy the crypt and alert the professors. While the fight continues, our protagonist analyzes each of her attacks and realizes she is intentionally withholding the electric charge with each sword strike. In other words, Professor Jordan is also deliberately holding back. Our protagonist decides to use this to his advantage. He finally speaks, asking if she is holding back because she too is afraid of bringing down the crypt. When our protagonist mentions this, she scoffs, asking if he wants her to believe he is a student while attacking, and demanding to know how he learned about this place. Our protagonist replies that he did his research. Because of this, he declares that he will show Professor Jordan something she has never seen before. Professor Jordan can tell that our protagonist is about to summon his avatar. She screams at him, asking if he is stupid, warning that his avatar will bring the entire place down. Our protagonist simply ignores her, noting that her warning is a bit late. When our protagonist successfully calls forth his avatar, Professor Jordan decides to kill him before the crypt is destroyed. Meanwhile, our protagonist exhales and sinks into his inner world. Inside that space, he comes face to face with a mysterious cloaked figure. In the middle of his meditation, a creature tries to attack him. However, a compressed form of his avatar suddenly appears and knocks it out, sending it flying. Then the figure speaks, addressing our protagonist by name. It explains that he has mastered the clan's secret technique and did well to come find him. The man then decides to make our protagonist his new disciple. Exiting his inner world, our protagonist uses a technique called compendium, an avatar compression technique. This causes his avatar to shrink at a visible rate. Seeing this, Professor Jordan charges at him. She is suddenly blocked and left momentarily stunned. She can't understand what she is seeing. Because, yeah, our protagonist's avatar has just compressed and now looks like a summon straight out of solo leveling. Professor Jordan asks in disbelief how this is even possible. Our protagonist tells her that if she wasn't so arrogant, he wouldn't have minded showing her, because there are countless avatar techniques in their kingdom. Professor Jordan curses and grows furious after feeling insulted. She charges at our protagonist once again. But this time, the avatar steps forward and blocks her. She can tell the avatar is incredibly fast. Because of this, she decides to go all out. Eventually, she begins to lose her composure as she can't even defeat the avatar. Our protagonist realizes she is being blinded by rage and needs to be stopped before she destroys the place completely. While she is still fighting the avatar, our protagonist makes his move. He deactivates the avatar by chanting, "Replace." The avatar suddenly disappears, leaving Professor Jordan in shock. Caught off guard, she suddenly notices our protagonist above her, ready to strike. Consequently, his attack lands, and she fails to block in time. Dropping to one knee, she asks through gritted teeth who he really is. Our protagonist doesn't answer. Instead, he stares at her with killing intent in his eyes and states that he will be the one asking the questions. Professor Jordan is visibly shaken, so our protagonist begins by asking what they wanted with Silas Monfront. She replies with defiance, saying she knows that the moment she talks, he will kill her. However, our protagonist cuts her off and promises that if she speaks, he won't kill her. She looks at him for a moment. After brief contemplation, she agrees to reveal everything. As usual, it all leads back to the Desax family, the leaders of the high nobility. They fear their power being undermined by the impure blood who are future nobles in the academy. Since they can't kill them directly, they allow them to ascend into nobility. In fact, they even let them grow powerful and increase in number until the time comes to eliminate them. This operation is what Professor Jordan calls the Purge. Our protagonist's eyes widen in shock after hearing this. He demands that she continues. So Professor Jordan explains further. Once every 50 years, the Desax family wipes out rival and rebellious impure blood nobles. Since they can't go around killing them in broad daylight, they orchestrate events and plant seeds of revolt within their territories. This is when the Order of Liberation steps in, using the chaos as a pretext for justice to eliminate them. Our protagonist reflects and realizes this is exactly what happened to him. On the day of his execution, the people revolted, leading to the execution of the king and the rest of the high-ranking nobles who opposed the Desax family. However, Professor Jordan isn't done yet. She adds that to ensure the purge runs smoothly, they select a student early on in the academy. That person in 20 years will be the one to carry out the next purge, and that person will be Silas Monfront. Next, our protagonist asks about the two remaining students. Professor Claire de Jourdain explains that, like Silas, they are candidates who can become champions and eventually lead the purge. Our protagonist seems to have gotten what he wanted. So he tells her that this time, he will ensure the purebloods and the Desax family's plans won't go as they imagine. With that, he bids farewell to Professor Jordan. The moment she thinks our protagonist has lowered his guard, she charges, calling him an idiot for turning his back on her. Our protagonist simply shakes his head. His avatar suddenly materializes and finishes the job. When our protagonist expresses regret for killing her, she asks what he means. He doesn't respond, but his thoughts reveal the reason. Apparently, he knows her personality. She is a foot soldier of the Desax family, loyal to the core. Even during the entire confrontation, he never planned to spare her. The next scene skips to several days later at the Noble Academy. During this time, our protagonist has been keeping an eye on Silas. In addition, the entire atmosphere of the academy has changed ever since Professor Claire de Jourdain died. The high-ranking nobles now know he can strike and kill at any time. Despite the tension, Silas, on the other hand, seems to be enjoying himself. Our protagonist reflects on Silas's earlier words about Ezekiel's death and believes that at this point in time, Silas still hates the purebloods. Although he admits he has no idea what made him change in the future, he also doesn't understand why the high-ranking nobles would choose an impure blood like Silas as a champion. Now, our protagonist is getting curious about him. After observing him for a while, our protagonist notes one major problem. His sister is crushing hard on Silas. It's kind of frustrating for him to watch. At the same time, Silas seems to be entertaining his little sister's advances, making the academy girls furious. Just as they sink deeper into their conversation, our protagonist suddenly appears, interrupting them. Madeline is inwardly furious at his antics and decides to leave as both guys watch her leave. Silas misunderstands the situation and thinks our protagonist has a crush on her. Before our protagonist can clear the air, Silas leaves, noting that jealousy can be a bad thing. Our protagonist is left speechless. The following day, our protagonist goes through his findings. We already know the 3 potential candidates to lead the purge. Our protagonist hasn't had any luck with Silas even after following him for weeks. However, the remaining 2 are different. Both are purebloods from Class A. The girl is the daughter of Professor Elise de Sinclair, and her name is Jean. The other is Arthur de Jussieu, whose family controls the black market in the capital. Our protagonist believes both descendants are scum and knows they will become pillars of the Order of Liberation. Because of this, he shifts his attention to them, since he needs to gather more information before the next purge in 20 years. While at it, it would also be a good opportunity to chop off a few noble heads. His train of thought is interrupted by 2 students calling out to him. Our protagonist recognizes them as his classmates, Milo and Bastine. He explains that after his recent stunt in the academy, a new rule was created. Students must move in groups. This is meant to prevent the noble slayer from attacking them. His friends complain about Professor Grimaldi's class, but our protagonist insists they shouldn't worry. The guys then become playful, bringing up the noble slayer. Our protagonist genuinely enjoys being around Milo and Bastine. Just then, Milo mentions a party Arthur is putting together. Our protagonist is clearly hearing this for the first time. So Milo explains that Arthur is throwing a party the following night, and even more shocking, he's inviting impure bloods. Our protagonist's expression turns grim as he realizes what's happening. In the original timeline, Arthur only invited them to humiliate them and make a statement. He even remembers that some students were mutilated while others didn't make it out alive. Speaking of which, Arthur shows up, casually greeting them with 2 girls by his side and asking what they are discussing. Bastine stiffens upon seeing him, while Milo explains they were just talking about his party. Arthur takes this as a cue to personally invite our protagonist, saying it will be the best party. Handing him a card, he insists he shouldn't be late. He then leaves, hoping to see all of them there. While his 2 friends chat excitedly, our protagonist looks at the address and notes it is located in a dangerous part of the capital. Both his friends are shocked when he insists they shouldn't attend the party. He reminds them of their place. They are not high nobility. Milo seems to agree, saying that since they aren't nobles, they should remember they are currently the weakest and lowest class. Our protagonist is speechless that Milo thinks they will remain in Class D forever. Meanwhile, a girl seems to be quietly observing our protagonist. The next scene begins on the day of the party. Before our protagonist heads there to carry out his mission, he decides to try something out, entering a room. Our protagonist notices the proving wall before him. Striking the arcanite in the center measures the power of a student. Gathering all his strength, our protagonist decides to discover his true power. After punching the wall, the arcanite lights up immediately, and his lightning begins to spread through the cracks in the wall. The wall has letters indicating the class level. Eventually, our protagonist's lightning reaches A, meaning he is finally on the same level as the Class A nobles. Combining this with his 20 years of experience, he is confident he can deal with Arthur. Before going to crash the party, something catches his attention. Turning, our protagonist can't believe it. It is Erwin de Sax's nameplate. Basically, this guy's power level is on a completely different level from Class A. This reflects the saying that there is always someone more dangerous out there. Nonetheless, our protagonist decides to focus on him later. For now, his main objective is dealing with Arthur. Our protagonist observes the party from a distance, and he can see Arthur really enjoying himself. Just then, our protagonist shows an expression of doubt at what he is seeing. Apparently, his 2 friends ignored his warning and still attended the party. Our protagonist doesn't understand why they decided to go, but it's not their fault, considering they have no idea what will happen to them. He also sees Erwin, and the guy is really strong. Our protagonist thinks he doesn't need to worry about him interfering. Not long after, our protagonist's ticket finally arrives. As the person walks down the alley, our protagonist suddenly grabs him. After restraining the guy, our protagonist explains that he is actually Arthur's personal drug dealer, Owl. Just by wearing the mask, our protagonist believes he can enter the party without raising suspicion. Predictably, The guards let him through and tell him where he can find Arthur. Once inside, our protagonist sees how lively the party is. Making his way toward Arthur, he knows he can't waste time. Just then, Gina calls out to him. She smiles politely and asks if he has something for her. Our protagonist is thankful that he prepared. After giving her a pill, she notices he is less talkative today. Regardless, she pats him on the chest and thanks him. Our protagonist is a bit worried she will discover his armor. Instead of being shocked, she jokes about him wearing a breastplate, adding that no one is planning to harm him. After saying that, she leaves, hoping Owl doesn't get into trouble. Our protagonist finally breathes a sigh of relief and decides to find Arthur. He is walking down the hallway when he suddenly hears Arthur's voice. So, our protagonist opens the door and finds Arthur wearing the Order of Liberation armor. Both Milo and Bastine are being messed with Bastine having lost his hand. Our protagonist is literally at a loss for words at what is happening. Meanwhile, one of Arthur's friends notes that he has gone a bit too far. In order to maintain his reputation, one suggests getting rid of Milo and Bastine. However, Arthur is too high on something to even listen. The moment he spots our protagonist, he grows excited, telling Owl that since he has come, he should give him his best products. He adds that Owl is the best, and he simply wants to have a great time. When our protagonist remains silent, Arthur wonders if he is stunned by seeing him in silver armor. Meanwhile, in our protagonist's thoughts, his mind replays the last moments caused by the people wearing that armor. Arthur is so excited that he reveals the armor is actually a prototype. The fool even reveals the plans of the killing impure nobles for the future. Turning to Milo and Bastine, Arthur blames them, saying that being awakened is the problem. Fed up, our protagonist interrupts him, telling Arthur not to get ahead of himself. Arthur seems confused by the remark. So, our protagonist slowly takes off his disguise before telling him he isn't going to see the following day. Even after our protagonist makes his intentions clear, Arthur wonders if he is still hallucinating or if the drugs are simply too strong. In response, a terrified member of his group corrects him, saying that this is the noble slayer. Our protagonist dashes toward Arthur like lightning. At the same time, Arthur grabs Milo and uses him as a shield. Understanding his intentions, our protagonist quickly switches tactics. He needs to create an opportunity for his two friends to escape. Because of this, he summons his compressed avatar. Immediately, the avatar appears behind Arthur. Reacting quickly, Arthur pushes Milo aside and activates his own avatar. Just like that, the fight begins. However, Arthur's avatar is so massive that it could bring down the entire building. At that moment, our protagonist's avatar disappears. At the same time, our protagonist tackles Arthur. Now, Arthur finally catches on to his plan. Meanwhile, Isaac tells him to hold on tight. With that, he lifts him up and literally takes him to the rooftop. Now on the rooftop, Arthur asks if this is his plan to assassinate him. He believes his friends at the party will rally to help him. Our protagonist simply asks what he is talking about. For high-ranking nobles, maintaining their reputation and image is everything. Arthur is shocked as he watches Erwin quietly leaving the party. Isaac tells him to take a closer look, noting that no noble would want to be discovered in a place like this. Hearing this, Arthur claims he doesn't need them anymore because his personal guards can handle it. As he says this, men suddenly leap from behind him. The moment they land, our protagonist immediately recognizes their armor. Each of the guards is wearing an Arcanite exoskeleton. Our protagonist notes that this is forbidden technology since it harms the wearer. Smirking, Arthur reveals that the exoskeleton connects the Arcanite directly to their nervous system. In other words, our protagonist is practically going up against 6 nobles. When the guards attack, our protagonist manages to block them. The rest lunge at him, but he simply dodges and creates some distance by leaping into the air. While mid-air, he tosses a few daggers to the ground, followed by activating his avatar. His avatar charges toward one of the guards and smashes down with a massive fist. However, to Isaac's surprise, the man actually puts up a barrier. Because of this, he realizes these are no ordinary guards. His thoughts are interrupted when he notices Arthur's avatar attacking. Our protagonist had almost forgotten about him. Still, he manages to block just in time, sending Arthur flying back. Seeing this, Arthur mocks him, asking if he thinks he can humiliate him in front of his friends. He declares that once he kills him and presents his head to the de Sax family, not only will all his debts be cleared, but he will also become their favorite and the one to lead the purge in the future. Hearing this, Isaac smirks beneath his mask, noting that, as usual, Arthur is getting ahead of himself. He wonders why the idiot never learns. Apparently, the daggers he threw earlier have created some kind of barrier. Our protagonist concentrates, noting that it has been a long time since he last used this technique. Once again, his master appears. He explains that arcanite is a mineral that feeds on electricity. Interestingly, that electric charge can be drained. When that happens, the most unstable substance in the world is formed. His master once hoped that he would master this technique and become unstoppable. With that, our protagonist activates the technique, chanting the word alteration. Immediately, the barrier activates. Our protagonist begins absorbing the electricity, creating black arcanite. At the same time, the guards in the arcanite exoskeletons realize they can no longer move. Now our protagonist uses the skill to suppress all the currents. All electrical charges are concentrated into a single point, which soon triggers a massive explosion on the rooftop. After the dust settles, our protagonist calmly picks up a sword. Although he sacrificed some daggers, he finds the outcome worth it. Unsurprisingly, Arthur manages to survive the explosion. Our protagonist notes that Arthur using his avatar to protect himself at the last second was a clever move. When he mentions that Arthur would have been a great warrior, Arthur panics and begins to beg, thinking our protagonist wants to kill him. He claims that he is actually a good person and doesn't deserve to die. So, our protagonist reminds him that this is not what he saw when Arthur was torturing his classmates. Fortunately for him, our protagonist has no intention of killing him. Instead, he wants Arthur to tell all his high nobility friends that the noble slayer is coming for them, because of course he is just getting started. However, before leaving, he almost forgets something. Suddenly, our protagonist cuts off one of Arthur's hands. The guy immediately lets out an agonizing scream. The next scene takes us back to the academy. Our protagonist walks down the hallway, his mind drifting to the previous day's events. He concludes that the de Sax family is already making moves, sowing the seeds for the Order of Liberation ahead of the upcoming purge. However, Shin pulls him out of his thoughts and gestures toward the infirmary. Our protagonist thinks to himself that, because he cut off Arthur's hand, not only will Arthur be unable to lead the purge, but he will also be unable to summon his avatar, since it requires both hands. In addition, this will automatically make him an outcast among the high-ranking nobles. Furthermore, Arthur will likely grow resentful toward his so-called friends for abandoning him. Anyway, our protagonist has come to see his friends. Seeing him, Baystein mentions that he and Milo won't be attending class for a while. Shin silently checks on Milo, while Baystein explains that they got into trouble the previous day. Turning to Isaac, he apologizes, noting it was his fault for ignoring the warning. However, Isaac tells them it wasn't their fault and suggests it was likely because of the noble slayer. Both of his friends seem confused. Milo is about to reveal what really happened, but our protagonist stops him. He makes up an excuse, saying his friend is still in shock. Then he insists they stick to the official version of the story, and both of them agree. With that settled, our protagonist leaves. Since Arthur is now out of the picture, it means the de Sax family needs to find another candidate, someone who will follow orders without question. Our protagonist has been keeping an eye on Silas, but he hasn't found anything suspicious. It's as if the guy has no idea what's going on. This means his next target is Jean de Sinclair. We skip ahead a few weeks. During this time, our protagonist has been observing Jeanne and has mapped out the safest place to confront her. Just then, his sister startles him. Our protagonist quickly hides what he is doing. Raising an eyebrow, Madeline asks if he thinks she is dumb. She walks over to a mirror and reveals his hidden weapons and tools. In addition, she notices that Arthur has been absent from school and wonders if this is her brother's doing. In response, our protagonist tells his little sister to mind her business. Hearing this, Madeline admits she promised not to ask questions. Imitating him, she says he'll probably claim the less she knows, the better. In response, Isaac insists he doesn't talk like that. Still, his little sister admits she discovered something. It has to do with Jean de Sinclair. She asks if our protagonist has a crush since he has been stalking her nonstop. Our protagonist explains it's not like that, and again tells her to mind her business. He also reminds her that she has been hanging around Silas. Madeline doesn't deny it, adding that the guy is very handsome. In the middle of their sibling banter, someone suddenly starts knocking on the door. Both of them freeze mid-argument, wondering who it could be. The moment our protagonist opens the door, he is completely stunned. The person standing there is Jean, greeting him with a warm smile.